Hello everyone, and welcome to the new Climate and Artists series launching today and continuing free of charge on Wednesdays from 11 a.m. to noon. I'm Frances Litman, the founder of the Creatively United for the Planet nonprofit society and the host of this new Wednesday Climate and the Artists series. I'd like to acknowledge we are hosting this webinar on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people here on beautiful Vancouver Island, for whom we give thanks for this privilege and their stewardship from time eternal. We have much to learn. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our Creative Solutions for a New World Earthfest series last week, completed the survey, and for the beautiful letters of support and donations we received. What an incredible week it was, with more than 25 inspiring presenters and 958 viewers from around the world. Today's webinar is the first in a new series presented by the Creatively United for the Planet nonprofit society in partnership with Jon O'Riordan and the Gail O'Riordan Climate and the Arts Legacy Series and the Wildwood EcoForestry Institute Society. Our intention is to continue the dialogue on how we can transform our economic and social systems to shift to a new ecologically based civilization following the COVID epidemic with both Climate and Artists series. Our climate series will focus on knowledge, the policies and science required to make the transformation to a new ecological society, and the artist series will focus on the wisdom that must support the knowledge base to ensure a holistic shift. A fully sustainable society must not only have the tools to change the way we do business, but must also be in touch with spirituality, generosity, artistic creativity, and empathy. Today, we are honored to launch the Creative Solutions for a New World Artist series with the very wise and wonderful, multi-talented Renaissance woman, Anne Mortifee. Anne's heart and soul is so expansive that she's been described as a bundle of grandmother and an earth goddess. Anne is an inspirational leader in both the environment and the arts. She is Canada's national performing treasure, a recipient of the Order of Canada, beloved by thousands for her penetrating wisdom and humanity. She is an accomplished performer, singer, composer of songs, music for ballets, musical theater, and opera, writer of poetry and books, global workshop leader, and much more. Anne has the heart of a lioness in preserving nature. She is a founder and longtime chair of the Trust for Sustainable Forestry, an organization focused on inspiring landowners through her own example to manage their forest lands according to the principles of ecoforestry. Anne hopes to inspire governments everywhere to apply these principles to forests on public lands, to stop the devastation of clear cutting. She is also the founder of Everwoods, a sustainable forestry community on Cortes Island. Anne joins us now from her idyllic home on Cortes Island, 2 ferry rides away from Vancouver Island in the Salish Sea. Welcome, Anne! Woohoo! It's so wonderful to have this opportunity to chat with you. Thank you for making this time to be with us.
Oh, Frances, it's always a joy to be with you. Always.
Well, I had the great pleasure to first meet you in 2012 at one of the very first premier Creatively United Earth Day Festival I coordinated in Victoria. And you and your beautiful husband, Paul Horn, the world-renowned flautist and father of New Age music, you both graciously agreed to perform at no charge. I was blown away. And I understand, like, you and Paul met, well, you met in a recording studio first time off, but you were also on a Greenpeace boat many moons ago protecting whales. And I think Paul was performing for the whales, and you were both activists at the height of your careers. And Paul had already, I think, performed at the Taj Mahal and even played with the Beatles. And both your careers, I tell you, are the stuff that legends are made of. And you both ended up marrying many years later with your lives already so full and rich. Like, tell us more. Like for the viewers that aren't aware of all this amazing history, just take us back a little.
To Paul, that's easy. Paul died 6 years ago, and it's just been an amazing thing because the years we had together were so profoundly fulfilling that I really haven't suffered, because he said, you're not going to suffer. In fact, I feel like in many ways, my life is blossoming into closeness that is remarkable.
Mm.
But yeah, we met in the studio first, and then we both went together on a sailboat, and a pod of whales came up beside the boat, and we both had earphones on. He had his golden flute, and we could hear the whales, and we could hear each other, and we each had a microphone. And so we sang I can't say a quartet, it would have to be a quadruple quartet, because I think there were about 11 whales. And it was remarkable. And just like in playing, when you're playing with another musician, we sang and waited for our, the impulse to improvise with them. And then we'd be quiet for a while and they'd sing, and then we went back and forth. And then it was just like I knew, like I know in a song, when it's over. And we just all became silent. They dove and off they went. And then he helped Haida, the whale who was left when his mate, Chimo, died. And he was dying. And he would refuse to work. So Paul went every day to SeaWorld, I think it was, and he played for Haida. Mm. And after about a week, he realized that Haida was not going to come out of the grief. And so he spoke to him and he said, Haida, I know how you feel, and we all feel so badly for you, but you are helping us to understand your being, and you're teaching us to have greater empathy. So I'm going to come back one more time and I'm going to play for you. Mm-hmm. And if you decide that it isn't enough, then I won't come back. I'll just accept that you're ready to go. And so he left and came back the next day, and he sat by the pool and started to play. And gradually Haida backed out of the corner and came over to him and just rolled over and looked right up at him. I've got a beautiful photograph of it. And there was a bucket near Paul that had fish in it. And Paul, while he's playing, he goes and he lifts out a fish and he holds it for Haida, and Haida opened his mouth and he dropped it in. And that was it. And they became very, very close after that. Oh. And so I'd had a lot to do with whales living out here in Desolation Sound. They pass all the time. And I had an incredible experience of them. Actually, it was the week that I met Paul. He came over to stay with me for a week, and I had to drive. He drove back, and I was bringing my little boat back from Campbell River, and I got the clouds came down and I was whited out and I couldn't see a thing. So I had to stop because I'd forgotten my compass in my joy of being with Paul. And so I just stopped the boat. I turned it off and I sat there very quietly. And about a half an hour later, I was just enjoying the stillness, thinking this must be what enlightenment's like. I mean, just nothing but white everywhere. And suddenly, poof, I hear them. And one comes up right beside my boat, and there's another one right in front of me. And I say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm going to make a terrible noise, but can I go with you? And so I go with them, and the one at the side just stayed there. And then after a while, maybe a half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, I had no idea where I was going. I couldn't see a thing. They seemed to disappear. And so I stopped the boat. And then I realized that they were fishing around me. And so I called Paul on my cell phone and I said, do you have your flute? He said, yeah. I said, would you play it for me? He says, okay. So he plays into his cell phone and I'm holding it up for the whales. And then they started to move on. And I said, I gotta go. And off I went. And about an hour and a half later, I was thinking, my goodness, I have no idea where I am now. And then one of them went in front of me and started, and so I turned the boat to the left, and then he went another way and then another way. And then I said, oh, I'm seeing trees here. I wonder where I am. And all the coast looks pretty much alike. And then suddenly I saw a dock and I said, oh my gosh, there's somebody, oh my gosh, that's my dock. They had led me right home. I burst into tears and just said, oh, I can't believe it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so Paul and I shared this connection with whales. In fact, on the back of my drum, I have a beautiful carving of a whale. And when we knew Paul was dying and that we wouldn't be coming home here, that we needed to be in the city, I took him out. We went out together out into the bay here, and farther along. And what we used to do in the evenings is just sit and let the boat drift back with the tide. And when we got to our bay, we'd go in. So we had our little glass of wine out there, and we're sitting there, and 2 orcas came by. And I said, "Oh, Paul, play." And I gave him his flute. And so he had difficulty breathing, but he played beautifully. And I got very dramatic. And I said to them, "Oh, this is the beautiful Paul Horn, who helped Haida mend his heart when he lost Chimo. And I'm the woman that you brought home through the fog. And I just want to say, we're not coming again together. I'll be back. But we want to know we're so glad you're here, and we love you. And thank you for everything." At which point, both of them just breached right out of the water, full body, and boom, came down. And then they were gone for a bit, and then boom, they come up again. And a third time, and Paul and I just looked at each other, and both of us had tears in our eyes. And I said, I think they got us, And that was the last time he was here. So I just feel we had such a magical relationship, such a profound connection on a spiritual level, on a natural level, that why would you grieve?
Absolutely. Now, where did all that spirituality come from? I mean, what rose up in you how old would you have been? Or were you just born this enlightened soul?
No. I definitely had to travel through some pretty mucky business. But I was born on a sugarcane farm in Zululand. And I was brought up on the veld, and my very first recollection is of lying in my bed just when you're waking up out of the dream state. And I would get the same feeling. It was a recurring thing that happened 100 times even over about 3 years. And as I was waking up, I would start to talk to myself and say, "Oh no, don't fall asleep. You're going to dream. You're on a farm in Zululand. You're going, no, don't fall asleep." And then I'd suddenly sit up in bed and I'd look at my hands and I'd say, "These aren't my hands. Who am I when I'm not dreaming that I'm Anne?" And that was it impressed me so deeply that as I grew older, I always had the feeling that we were living in some kind of a dream. And that my mother wasn't really my mother. She was part of my dream. And of course, they began to worry about me a little bit. And then as I got older, I realized, yeah, that's what it is. It's a virtual reality we live in. I mean, quantum physics now knows that my hand is not my hand. If you go to the subatomic level, it is light and energy. So I think that's where it started. And because I grew on a farm and we were 40 miles from the closest neighbor, I learned to be in nature. And it was nature that was my teacher. And it was so beautiful. And that kept my heart and mind open to other dimensions and to animals and to the land. So I think it started when I was a girl, and then it went through lots of metamorphosis,
Right. And I see a Zulu. Is that a Zulu mask? The one that was on your cover on the pole behind you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had a very interesting mentor. Can you tell us how it ties back to your South African experience?
Well, yes, during the era of apartheid, because apartheid came in about 2 years after I was born. And so that was why my father knew he had to move us out of Africa. He was so concerned about it and knew it was so wrong and couldn't do anything to stop it. And I always felt that I owed a debt on behalf of my family, because my grandfather had been in the Boer War and had created the farm, and I'd grown up there, and that my family grew rich on the backs of the Zulu. And I always felt that I owed a debt on behalf of my family and my race. Mm-hmm. Similar to how, you know, in North America, we have that same deep, profound debt, mm-hmm. and it isn't usually paid. So I wrote a musical called When the Rains Come. And the purpose of it was to end apartheid. And the thing that was so powerful about it was that I had 3 experiences during it. One was I was writing a song when the white woman who loved the Zulu boy she'd grown up with, who'd become one of the heads of the freedom fight in South Africa, they'd both been thrown in jail because of the Immorality Act. You could not marry someone outside of your race. And so they were in prison, and her father arranged for her freedom. And she said, but what about Kenyelli? And he said, no, no, no. And so I was in my studio writing the song when she's telling her father, I will not take my freedom if Kenyelli is not free. And it was pouring rain, I remember that night, and I was sobbing in my studio, writing the song, no, I have seen a better way. It calls to me both night and day. Man is not separate and apart. We beat as one, we share one heart, and I for one will live my part. There is no other way for me. And as I was singing it, my door opens and my friend Hannah comes in and says, Anne, I just heard on the radio, Nelson Mandela has just been let out of prison. And I went, oh, and I went out on my porch in the pouring rain and yelled, Nelson, you're welcome. And I knew I was one of the people who had put my love and energy and intention on ending apartheid. Then about 9 months later, I was at the Arts Club Theatre in Vancouver, and we were doing a run through, Ed Henderson and I, of the whole show for the director, lighting, costumes, etc. And we get to the end singing When the Rains Come and Water the Earth with a Sweet Song. And I get all in tears. And then Marcia, who did the lights, was in tears. And then I said, you know, I'm only going to write about Africa till apartheid is over. And suddenly we hear someone running up into the rehearsal hall, and they burst the doors open and said, we just heard on the CBC, they're dismantling apartheid.
Oh, man.
So, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, you know. So then we set opening night, which was maybe a year later. I'd have to look at the calendar, but it was a while later because we had to rehearse and hire everyone and get the sets and so forth. And it turned out that we were standing in the wings, waiting to go on for opening night. And they were lining up in South Africa at the same time for the first free election. And my work was magnificently obsolete the day it opened. And that was when I knew what has changed my life and what I've over all these years grown to understand how it works. And it has to do with what you passionately give your heart to, how you dream of the future, how you don't let the negativity weigh you down, how you just keep putting out the possibility, the possibility, the possibility. You own it, you live it, you breathe it. And it goes out and it vibrates this vibrating matrix in which we all live. And that my work somehow, the field wanted me to know that my dreaming makes a difference. So then I go to Findhorn to do a workshop that's in the north of Scotland. And a book falls off the shelf. And it's written by Vusa Mazulu Credo Mutwa, who's the head Sangoma, which is a shaman of the Zulu nation. And I was so excited. And I of course, bought it and took it back to my room that night and read. And suddenly I read exactly what I had written the Sangoma to sing about. I'd written a song that said, "The stars are holes within the floor of heaven, through which we see the power of its light. And when the world around us grows so full of darkness, we look to them to guide us through the night. Each morn in a world so far above us, a boy and girl herd oxen to the hills. And when evening comes and darkness falls around them," which is like now, "then they herd their oxen home to the kraal. Though seasons pass, their journey, it never falters. The hooves of oxen beat into the dust, and they wear away the very floor of heaven, and they pierce the stars we now see over us." And I had thought when I wrote it, what a wonderful way to show that it's the small things we do in a life that make a difference. And so there I am reading my book, and in Mutua literally says, "We Zulus believe the stars are holes pierced in the floor of heaven by a boy and a girl leading oxen to and from the hills morning and night."
I don't know anyone who has a life like yours. This is amazing. It's beautiful.
So I said, okay, something's happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. So I ended up calling the editor in New York and asked if he knew where I could get in touch with Vusamazulu Credo Mutua. And he said, no, but I do know where the editor's number in South Africa. I phoned him and he said, oh, this is interesting. Mutua has never been to my home for lunch before, but he's here. Would you like to talk with him? So I have this incredible conversation with him, and he said, you come to South Africa, you find me, and together we will go to Spirit. And so I took my son, Devin, who was 10 at the time, out of school, and we went off. But that's another whole story that does go on for a while.
Wow. Well, you know, there's a video message online because he just recently passed, right?
I know he did. Yeah.
And he, this message I thought was really beautiful. So if anyone wants to look it up, they can, and they can find the correct spelling on your website because you've got his name all over there. But he said that that we're of two minds: the mother mind, which is feeling, and the warrior mind, which is linear. And the importance of awakening the mother mind and thinking like a grandmother, and recognizing the importance of entities like trees. So I thought that was very, perceptive. And here you are. He must have just like, wow, taken to you. How many years did you have this connection with him?
Well, I only went to Africa periodically, and it was more an internal thing, because it turned out that the Sangoma in my dream, that's a whole other story. And I hate to tell snippets when the whole thing is so incredible. Right. But it turned out that his grandmother was the woman I dreamed about, and that I created the part in my musical, and I named her Escowe. And he said, well, what does she look like in your dreams, this Sangoma? And I said, well, she's interesting. She's got one white eye and one black. Ah, which eye is white? And I said, it's the right eye. And tell me, what do her legs look like? Well, her legs look like the trunks of a tree. And what is her name? I said, well, her name is Escowe. And he said, what? I said, Escowe. And he said, that woman is my grandmother. She had a cataract in her right eye, which turned it completely white. And she had elephantitis, which made her legs look like the trunks of a tree. Her name, it was Escowe. She told me she was sending someone to see me. I just did not think it would be a white woman. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So it's been an extraordinary journey. And I think that's why I have hope at this time for where we are. Because I believe we're on the threshold of a wonderful awakening. And that awakening is about us kind of coming out of the fog of personal need and self-aggrandizement and possessions and consumerism, and we look around at the world and we're going to say, oh, we've made some very bad choices here. We've made some real mistakes in our freedom to make choices. And we've been like a young kid riding a bike that's leading to a cliff, and we're going to go over the cliff because we haven't learned perspective, and we haven't learned wisdom, and we haven't learned love, the mother's heart. The mother loves all her children, no matter what they're like. And I think that the Native people, the Native Americans and Native Canadians, they knew that the aged woman who had passed through being a maiden and then being a mother who gives birth and then moving beyond mother into wise woman, that her job was to keep us clear. There's something about what happens when the estrogen goes down that allows you to discern as opposed to just be compassionate. Mm-hmm. You start to have edges that say, we cannot do this anymore. We have to choose differently. And so I do believe what Mutwa said. And I think many of us do. It's why we're turning back to the earth, which is our great mother, mm-hmm. which is the mother of us all equally. And that if she turns her face away from any of us, it's over. And so I believe that this day now, this time, is a time where we could historically look back and say, that was the time when humans woke up, mm-hmm. when their life became on the precipice because of the choices they were making around resources, all the practical things we talk about. And I came into working with the environment. Oh, I get choked just thinking about it because of my love for the beauty of this earth. Mm-hmm. Every continent I've traveled in, whether living in a Saharan desert and seeing the road runner running around and the smelly, warthog kind of thing, and all of the beautiful creatures and the birds of the air and other people. I've never met a person that underneath you couldn't find the pearl. And so my whole life has been, what can I do? What can I do? I finally had to just say, I'm just one of us. It's now not what can I do? It's what can we do? And that's why, Frances, my love and appreciation for you is just so extreme. Aww. Because this is what we have to do, each one of us. We need to not only awaken personally, do the work internally to see that this life is so precious and so fleeting, but to wake up collectively and find our resolve and say, this we can do. Just like what happened in apartheid. Millions of us, I toured with Harry Belafonte, and he and I talked endlessly about the end of apartheid. And it was the last sanctioned governmental vulgarity about people. And it ended, and it created a space for other things to start moving. We are an evolving species. We're very young. We're adolescent. We behave in adolescent ways. And it takes a lot to awaken. And it takes a lot to fall in love with life as it is. And so what you're doing and what so many of us are doing, we're waking up. Mm-hmm. And science is offering us this grand opportunity to peek through to a subatomic level and to realize that whether it's the rock or the bird or the tree or another human being, we are all made up of the same stuff. Mm-hmm. We're light beings. We're made of electromagnetic waves and particles. And there's no difference between what's at the root of a tree and what's at the root of me.
It's true. Like Joni Mitchell said, we are stardust, right?
We are stardust. Yeah, the sons of God touched the daughters of the earth, giving birth. So there is. I think we're living in a precious time, and this COVID thing is driving us inward. So many of us have suddenly, you don't have everything unless you're fixated on the web. There are moments, and I'm so blessed because I live where I do, so nothing is different here. We're all in, except I have to be careful with my neighbors, but we have tea on the veranda and chat away. So I really believe, and there's a lot of suffering going on in the world, but the Hopi Indians said that when the buffalo return, there'll be a purification, and the white buffalo has been returning since 1995. White buffaloes are being born. And I remember asking Mutua Crido if he knew what the white lions that had returned to Timbavate, the pure white lions, they'd never been there before. And he said, we Zulus have a prophecy that when the white lion comes back to Timbavate, that there will be a purification in the world. And they have arrived around the same time. So there is this feeling that this is a chance. And we must choose. It's not about could we choose. We must choose. And we must choose to awaken rather than to sleep on and hurry towards the precipice. And I think there's enough, and I have so much faith in the young who have inherited the mess. And none of us, I think, did it on purpose. I don't think we even knew what we were doing. We were too unconscious. We thought the mother would just give and give and give and give, and we could cut down all the forests, eat all the salmon, do whatever we wanted to do, and somehow she would grow them back overnight so we could keep taking and eating and eating and eating and eating and growing fatter and fatter and fatter. And now what do we have? An obesity crisis. So interesting.
Isn't it though? It's absolutely fascinating. And I love, you told me when you go to bed at night, you're giving thanks to the future. And I love that, because I've always said, let's not dwell on what we don't want. Let's put our energy to what we do want. And your prayer is just that. Tell us about that.
Well, I started doing this a while ago, and it has brought me so much joy, because I think, when you're looking at the vibrations in the world, if you're putting out, oh my God, we're all going to die, and how can we get out of this? And there's no hope for the planet, and it's too terrible, and oh my Lord, that's what we're creating. Because we now know that the law of attraction attracts to us personally and collectively what we dream, what we think. So I go to bed at night and I lie there and I just imagine I'm in 2025. And I start saying, to whom it may concern, thank you for my beautiful life. Thank you for this beautiful planet. Thank you that we're all awakening. And that 5 years ago, when I started praying this prayer, it looked pretty dim at times. But look what has happened in this last 5 years. So I just look back at the last 5 years and over, the blessings that have come to humanity, the people who have woken up, the things we've done together. And so I have a ball at night. And sometimes I end up laughing, and sometimes I end up almost weeping in gratitude for this marvelous opportunity to put out what we need.
I was told that it's such a gift to be alive at this time, because it's a renaissance. There's a renaissance happening, and we get to witness this. And I often wondered as a kid, did they know back in the 17th century that they were in a renaissance? How did they know it was a renaissance?
Exactly.
We're creating it, right?
We are creating it. And the joy of creating it, and but it's a practice. You have to be very vigilant, because we have these old patterns in us. And there are days I wake up and I just think, I live out here in the bush. How can I be of service? Where do I fit? What is my purpose? Na, 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 the old tapes of insecurity and not knowing how I can make a difference. And then I go, oh, I forgot. Thank you for my marvelous life. Thank you that I'm the most blessed person on earth. Thank you for the changes that are coming. And I just push myself back into gratitude. And at first I'm going, thank you for my beautiful life. It's really great. You know, I'm out here in the middle of, you know, pandemic all by myself on an island. Oh, you know, and then suddenly it starts to bubble up again. And I feel it's my duty. And it's a practice. It's a practice. It's not given easily because we have these patterns that feel sorry for ourselves, that want to blame somebody, that feel it's helpless, it's hopeless. And it's a spiritual practice to stay in sync with what you want to create in the world, which is love, joy, kindness, diligence, resolve, commitment to our collective awakening, and to be part of this huge renaissance, as you put it. Exactly.
And be aware of just the littlest things. Like I know so many people who will see, for example, myself included, I'll see hearts in nature. So I'll see heart-shaped cloud or a heart-shaped rock or heart-shaped bark. I'll see all kinds of hearts everywhere. And I don't take that for granted. I go, that's a sure sign. And it just makes me feel like I'm not alone. I'm on the right path. And those are, yeah, those signs and signals that we can choose to tune into, or we can ignore and just go about our lives. But I think when you tune in, that's like, well, that's what your book. I love this book. This is amazing. I love this book. And Oprah Winfrey apparently loves this book and keeps it by her bedside. So yeah, what a special book. And I know that you collaborated on this with Courtney Milne, who was one of Canada's amazing photographer. And I know Cheryl's watching right now. So hi, Cheryl. His wife, Cheryl. Yeah. Anyways, and tell us about like back, you know, like you can find inspiration in the littlest things, as I was saying, from a heart-shaped rock or just picking up a book when you're, you know, like this. It just changes your whole outlook. And if we change our energy, we change our day, right?
Absolutely. And that's why every morning, I've always got up, even as a little girl, I got up at 5 in the morning. I guess I was born at 5 in the morning. So I assume that somehow is me saying, well, I'm here again, you know, I don't know. But I love to get up at 5 in the morning, and I wake up kind of organically, and I look at my clock, up 5 o'clock. And that's how this book came to be, is that I decided that for a whole year, I would get up every morning, as I always did, at 5. But I had this beautiful book that Paul had given me by Paramahansa Yogananda with little sayings and lovely photos. And it's where you put, you know, dentist at 4 o'clock. And I couldn't bear to put dentist at 4 o'clock in such a lovely book. So I said, I'll use this book. And it had these little spaces about that big. And I started off my writing, you know, was normal, and then it got smaller and smaller and smaller. And I would just do my meditation, and then I would just wait. And then I'd think of the first words that came out, and I'd just put them down without premeditating anything, and just would write and write. And it would always somehow just finish just by when I didn't have another 1/16 of an inch left to write in.
The power of meditation. I love a meditation practice. And I was one of those kids or people that I never thought I could stop and meditate for 1 minute. Now I'm doing it twice a day. I have a practice in the morning and the evening. And I can't tell you what a difference that makes to somebody's life. Like calms the energy in the world down too. So it's helping everybody, really.
Well, I think that's what I'm loving, is seeing it's in a Buddhist practice, in transcendental meditation, which was what Paul taught and studied with the Maharishi in Rishikesh in India, and taught me. And I had been already meditating about 30 years with Kriya Yoga from Paramahansa Yogananda. And I found the same thing. There's something about taking time to let your whole nervous system slow down, when you're not mesmerized by what you see, hear, taste, touch, or feel, and you just go inward and let the stillness overwhelm you or expand you. And you go down into the body, and then the body seems to disappear, and then suddenly you're in a transcendent state. And that is like, as Paul used to say, it's like dipping a yellow cloth in dye. It comes out, and then it slowly fades. You dip it in again, and every time you dip, the cloth gets deeper and deeper in the color. And so I think there are millions of people now. I mean, when Paul was a young man, he was teaching meditation, and the head of the one of the record companies that he was doing an album for said, "Would you not tell anybody, but I need to ask you something." And so Paul said, "Sure." And he said, "You sure you can keep this a secret?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, I want to learn to meditate, but I would lose my job if they knew."
Wow.
I mean, that's how much we've changed since then. Yoga was laughed at. So we're in a magical time.
Aren't we though? And the more people that end up meditating, the more we're calming the crazy energy in the world. And it just opens us up to a field of all possibilities. And if we stay in that field of all possibilities, which you absolutely live every breathing moment of your life, we have so many more opportunities. Like, we don't get stuck in that downward spiral of this bad news, bad news, bad news. It's like, no, we have the power to create what we want, and we can, and we do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you know that, and when you realize if you're going to have a habit, why not have one that's uplifts you? Why have a habit that brings you down? Why not change your inner climate to affect the climate around you of the people you love and you meet and so forth? So I do think that we've got the technology internally now to be able to do that. And it is meditation and yoga, these ancient practices, being in nature, loving nature, saying good morning. I have a crow a raven that I'm having an ongoing relationship with. He comes and sits right outside and he goes, "Grr, grr," and I go, "Grr, grr," and he goes, so we go back and forth, and he'll say, "Well, she's getting it, but not that well," and he'll fly off. I think he finds me quite amusing. I don't know.
I'm sure he's probably falling in love.
Well, I certainly have.
And that's the way to be. So, and you talking about the eagle now, you're called, also known as the white eagle woman. Can you just share a little story about that?
Well, I had a very powerful dream, and the dream was very simple, but it impacted me tremendously. In fact, it took me into a state of terror. And it was a simple dream of a man walking toward me. I'd recognize him anywhere if I ever meet him, which I won't be surprised if I do one day. And he's walking towards me, and he knows that I have a cape made of white eagle tail feathers in a pillow slip under my arm, and that it's been built on a white moose hide. And as he came closer to me, I started thinking, should I let him know that I know that he knows that I know that he knows that I have a cape made of white eagle tail feathers? Or should I pretend that I don't know that he knows that I know that he knows about this cape? But what do I, and as he gets closer, I get more and more anxious, and until it's so overwhelming that I wake myself up and I am literally dripping wet and so frightened. I can't even, it was when I was living in a tent, and I couldn't even go out of the tent to go to the bathroom because I was too frightened. I mean, and I went, whoa, that's strange. And the very next morning, a young woman who I had called Sunny, who may be watching, if you are Sunny, she came to my door and she said to me, I walked the beach today and I asked the creator that I wanted to give you a gift, and she hands me a white eagle tail feather. Okay. Within 2 weeks, I had 13 eagle tail feathers. White. And then a package arrives in the mail. I didn't tell anyone about the dream. A package arrives in the mail from Winnipeg. and it turns out to be a white moose hide. And so I called the company and I said, excuse me, I think you sent this to the wrong person. And could you tell me who paid for this? Can you tell me where this came from? And they said, yeah, sure. So they go into their thing and the computer, and then they say, well, this is kind of strange. It just says paid, but it doesn't say who sent it. And I said, well, I didn't order this. And so here's my phone number. Call me if somebody calls and says, where's my white eagle or moose hide? And so then, of course, I knew they weren't going to call me. And so I ended up making a cape, and the story goes on. So when the land next door came up for sale, I had had this deep connection with the eagle by now and was in a conversation. In fact, remembered a time where I'd come out to these waters with my father and mother when I was 18 or 17 and had had an encounter with the eagle that was really powerful and changed me, and had written this long poem, which was all about how he took me on a journey. And I realized suddenly, as I was standing on the beach, I realized that I'd been brought back to the place where I gave my life to the eagle. Because the last verse in the poem, I won't do the whole poem, but the last verse was, bird of prey, to honor you, I give my life away, that should the gods desire within my breast to play, then they may surely enter in and leave me once they're done. For I have seen thy ancient world in the vital, in the vast, the great beyond, or something like that. I can't remember it. I can only remember it when I go from the beginning like a proper poem. So I suddenly realized I've been brought back to that place to keep my pledge. So I turned up to the land that I knew was going to be clear cut. And I was with 3 of my neighbors here on Cortez, and we talked about it. We'd actually, in anticipation, formed a little company together that we called Eco Initiatives, Inc. And we said, we've got to find a way of saving this. And of course, none of us had any money. So I said to the land, to whom it may concern, if you want me to buy this land, to find a way to buy this land, I'll lay down my life for you. But I have to know that I'm doing the right thing, because I was a single mom and I was responsible for Devin, who was still, oh gosh, I guess he was about 13 at the time. And so I said, if, I don't know where it came from, probably from my dream, but I said, if you want me to do this, place a white eagle tail feather on the beach today. And if I find it, I will do anything I can. I will lay down my life, my wealth, my everything on your behalf. And I walk about 50 feet, go around this giant boulder, and there is my beautiful, and I remember this poor feather that has gone through so much. I remember holding it up and going, oh no. And that started the hardest of 10 years of my life. It's just, and it led to the Trust for Sustainable Forestry and coming up with a new vision of how we can financially make viable being sustainable with the forests, where you can have light on the land development, but you cluster the houses, you keep them small. And so on the land next door, which we did save, which was pretty difficult, amazing though, a lot of, there again, unbelievable, serendipitous, I thank you so much, stories. We ended up saving 96% of the land and paying for the property. I mean, amazing. And this is, and we started the trust to make it possible that we could help other people with it as well. And that's why it's kind of exciting that next week, you're going to be with 2 of my favorite people, Eric and Peter from Wildwood, who are incredible guys that really understand what I'm serving. I just do it out of love, but they do it out of knowledge and a deep, they do it out of love too, but a deep knowledge of what they're talking about. So I'm excited. I'll definitely be tuning in for that.
Right on. And you have an affiliation with Wildwood, who we're also in partnership with here. Is that a long time affiliation, or you're on the board?
Well, no, I'm not on the board, but we have a strong relationship. They are, one of the things the trust wanted to do was build a school for ecoforestry. And we talked to Royal Roads University and the U of Vic and also UBC. And this was years ago, and they really became interested in, but we were ahead of our time. And then we heard Wildwood was doing, at the time when Wildwood was almost lost, the trust really got involved to try and help in any way we could. And then we started working together about building a school. So that's the big project that we're looking at now. And I can feel it in the web. There's some great person coming along who's going to help us do it. Oh, yes, I see it. Thank you. Good. You're
manifesting that. I'm glad to hear that.
I'm manifesting somebody who has the resources and the passion to help us manifest that school so that we can teach young people a different way of doing forestry, so community forests all over the province can be doing light on the land, one tree at a time.
Absolutely. And just a little bit about Wildwood. It's up in the Yellow Point area near Cedar, just a beautiful piece of property with a lake. Merv Wilkinson was an eco-forester from way back. And that property is just so special. Like, how did you even hear about it to begin with?
Well, Bill Friedel, who was one of my partners with Ron Bazar and Ron Walda, Denise and Ron Walda, Bill used to work with Merv. And so he was passionate about ecoforestry. And Ron Walda is a miller. And so when I was building my house here, I didn't want any clear-cut trees in it. So everything came out of free falls, windfalls or off the beach or whatever. And I built it in that way. And so you can see those things came in behind my kayak, puffing and puffing along in the morning. I check all the things, and I know I could have gone to jail with it, but hey.
I love that you practice what you preach. I mean, really, you live your life that way. It's beautiful. And so, as you mentioned, next Wednesday, May 6th, we will launch into the climate part of our series with two of Vancouver Island's leading international ecoforestry experts, Peter Jungwirth and Eric Piquila, sharing a history of ecoforestry and how we can nurture nature's ecosystems as a climate change solution. And I'm so glad you're going to be part of that. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the forests, or we've just got a few minutes left?
Well, the thing I've learned is that everything truly is alive, and there's a conversation going on. And like my relationship with you, every time I'm with you, Francis, my relationship and love for you deepens. And in the same way, every time I'm with a tree, my love relationship deepens. And there's for me. I can feel things more now because I've opened my feeling body, not because I'm special and know how to do it, but because I show up. And lots of us are showing up now and having living relationships with the living world. And what is so interesting is that the serendipitous things that happen, they're not by chance. And the more you listen for the signs and signals that nature is sending your way, the more you realize that it's a part of your own self coming forward to you. So when I meet a tree that who catches my attention, and trees have led me out of the forest when I was lost.
That's a great story. Oh boy, another one for, yeah.
Another time. You know, because it is a great story, because we could have died out there. And I remember Chief Dan telling me that they trained their children, that if they got lost in the woods, the standing people had seen them come in. Trust them, and they will show you the way out. Now, how it all works doesn't matter. It just works. So I have had altar. I love altars, but then that's my sort of theater drama. I love to have a visual that captures my attention. So I have an altar that led to Paul. I have an altar that from Kuan Yin. I have an altar for my eagles, of course. I have an altar for the Black Panther. I have an altar for White Tara from the Buddhist thing. I have an altar to Jesus. I have an altar, like I love altars. And do I actually believe in a pot-bellied boy with an elephant head who rides a mouse? Well, no, of course not. Do I believe in him? Well, of course I do, because I've had conversations with him and things have manifested. I've had manifestations when I've prayed to Jesus. I've had manifestations when I prayed to Kuan Yin. It's almost like the archetypal realm of the sacred is everywhere present. And whatever we give our love and our attention to, believing, having faith that we're making contact, something happens. And I can speak about it now because it happens all the time. And I used to feel like, how did I get to Mutua Credo? How could I want to make a thing, a gesture on behalf of my family and my karma? And then I end up with the head Sangoma, the spiritual leader of the Zulu nation, who receives my offering. I mean, how did that happen? I took that almost as a burden, because then I thought, well, what am I supposed to do with this now? How do I make this, what do I do? Well, I'd already done it. I just didn't know I'd already done it. I was just doing what came naturally, but my attention was so fixated on making a shift for my family, for the Zulu people. I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to do something on behalf of myself and my family. And then, whoop, it vibrated the web, and the web wanted to say back, thanks, gotcha. And that's all that was going on. And I'm not burdened to do something better, bigger, different, or more. I just have to show up. And it's true for all of us. Every time we show up, every time we show up and give our heart to what is positive and true and beautiful, the universe responds. And every time we look negatively, the universe responds. We are creating our future. Every one of us, with everything we think, with everything we do. And my deepest prayer from the future, thank you that everyone got the love bug and decided, let's do it differently, folk. It would be so much more fun. Let's get rid of all those bombs, shall we? Let's let the trees and forests grow back, shall we? What about the salmon? Oh, wouldn't that be fun? How about clear skies? Oh, what a good idea. You know, just put our hearts and minds in harmony and make a change. Why not?
Why not? And you know, everything is here for us to thrive. It's not just about surviving. I mean, look at what the universe created, right? And wise words, well spoken. My goodness, Anne, that was so rich. Oh my goodness, I hope you all feel like I do. Like, this has been like the best hug I've had in a long time. Thank you so much, Anne. Is there anything else you want to say in parting? I think you've said it.
I think I've said it. I think in all this positive thing, it doesn't mean we forget those who are suffering. We know that life can be really difficult, but I also know that by being in fullness myself, I help to bring us all to fullness.
Mhm.
And I just believe that, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you, Frances. Love you too.
I love you. Thank you. I think we all do. That was amazing.
Yeah.
And we'll have this recording for everybody soon. So just thank you, Anne. Can't thank you enough.
And to everyone who's on the program, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and joining us. And Frances, thank you so much for creating this.
We'll be doing this again, Anne. Don't worry about it. I'll be looking forward to seeing you again soon. All of us will be. And please, everyone, be sure to register for next week. We'll see you next Wednesday. Bye for now. Thank you, Anne.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.